In this video, we're going to show that if capital F of x equals 1 over f of x times g of x, then its derivative is equal to negative capital F of x times f prime of x over f of x plus g prime of x over g of x, provided that f and g are differentiable and neither is equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to use two things to do this. I'm going to use the product rule and the chain rule. So let's remember the product rule. Product rule states that if we're taking the derivative of a product of two functions, say f times g, then we're going to get the derivative of f times g plus the derivative of g times f. Right? And the chain rule this one states that if you're taking the derivative of a function inside a function, so f of g of x, then you get f prime of g of x times g prime of x. And I like to think of that as the derivative of the outside multiplied by the derivative of the inside. Here you're taking the derivative of f, which is outside the parentheses, and you're multiplying by the derivative of what's inside, so g prime of x. Alright, so back to our problem. Okay, so let's rewrite capital F of x. So I'm going to bring f of x and g of x to the numerator, rewriting it like this. So these are raised to the negative 1 power because I took them from the denominator. Okay, and then we can view this as first we're going to take the derivative of what's outside, which is this negative 1, and then we're going to take the derivative of what's inside, which is f of x times g of x. And we're taking the derivative because the problem is asking us to write the derivative in a certain form. So logically the first step would be to try to take the derivative, right? So first step is the derivative of the outside. Okay, so f of x equals that. So then f prime of x. What's the derivative of the outside? Think about it like you're covering up what's inside. You don't care about it. You just want the shape of the outside. What's the gist of the outside? It's something to the negative 1, right? So something to the negative 1. What's the derivative of that? Use the power rule, right? Negative 1 comes down. I leave the inside the same. And then I subtract 1 from the exponent. So that's the first part of the chain rule. I took the derivative of the outside. And then I need to take the derivative of the inside, right? So what's the derivative of the inside? That's the derivative of f of x times g of x. What does that look like? That's just the product rule, right? We wrote it up here, the derivative of f times g. So that's f prime of x times g of x plus g prime of x times f of x. This is the inside. So that completes the chain rule, right? to complete the chain rule, we had to use the product rule for this portion, for the inside portion. Okay, so now let's go ahead and rewrite this. We need to make it look like this. That's what they want, right? We have a negative sign, which is good because they have a negative sign. But somehow we have to get an f of x, a big F of x, right? And remember what big F of x was. It was 1 over f of x times g of x. Okay, so we've got a negative 1. Now I'm going to move these back down. I'm going to write them separately. So there's 2 of these. There's 2 of them because it was squared. I'm just writing them separately. And why did I do that? It's because f of x is 1 over f of x times g of x. Do we have one of those? Yes, we do, right here. Okay, so this is multiplied by the inside portion. Okay, so remember this is going to be negative big F of x. This portion circled in blue, right? So we can rewrite this. It's going to be negative big F of x. And then I'm going to put this f of x, g of x in the denominator right underneath all of this stuff. So I have f prime of x times g of x. That's g prime of x times f of x. And then underneath it, I'm putting f of x times g of x. Okay? So now I'm going to carry out this division. Right, so that's the term on the left. Then I have plus g prime of x times f of x over f of x g of x. And now we get some nice cancellations. So here the g of x cancels, and here the f of x cancels. And what we are left with is negative f of x times f prime of x over f of x plus g prime of x over g of x. That's exactly the form that we were asked for. Alright, so to sum up this problem, we had to use the chain rule and the product rule. And then there was one tricky step where we had to rewrite what we got so that we had a capital F of x. And to do that, we just had to think about what capital F of x was and see that we had one after we took the derivative.